Good morning, my lovelies. AY number 333, which I only remember because it adds up to 9, which is an auspicious number.
It
And I
is.
found it to be like one of the most important lessons I've done in a long time. The name of the lesson, which I found out they were not named by him. They were named by a knot. The lessons were named, the lessons were recorded by Feldenkrais. What he did was he would teach his class and record it on a reel-to-reel. And then the next day, he taught 7 days a week. I think he taught 8 classes, 7 days a week. I mean, total. So the next day he would sit and eat his lunch and play the tape and observe the class. And then he would make notes, what he would change about the lesson. Then he'd re-record over it. And he'd keep doing that until he felt the lesson was complete.
Wow.
And then it went in a trunk, which was then uncovered after he died. And after many, 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 many years after he died, I think his nephew, who's in charge of his estate, agreed to release the tapes to the Feldenkrais Guild, and a couple of people who were fluent in Hebrew translated them.
Wow, what a process.
Right. And some of the tapes were stolen. So we don't have all the lessons.
Oh, no.
We have over 500 that were recorded and notated down, and he translated into English. And this is number 333. And I can't even, what was the name of it? It was like Opposition of Forces. That's the name of the title of the lesson is Opposition of Forces.
So did he have a curriculum, or was he just sort of improvising?
That's a good question.
In these classes?
That's a really good question. What do you think, Dillis? I think he, let's see, I think that he had his class, right? He had his people in front of him. So I think he probably designed lessons around what he saw could be improved. But, you know, like some of these lessons are so unbelievably complex and impossible. You know, I'm like, you know, I think, what did he like get drunk and like get his skeleton and lay it on the floor and go, let's see what we can do with it, you know? And, you know, oh, that's a good one. How would I break that down and to teach it? But so I do know that the first training, he didn't have a curriculum really. When he was invited to teach in the United States, which was the first organized training, he based all of the lessons in the San Francisco training on judo. It was all about judo roles, which he broke down over a period of, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 years? 8 weeks during the summer. He came over and did these lessons, and then when he left, people went and lived with him in Tel Aviv to keep studying with him. And those people became the big muckas of trainers, and that's why San Francisco became like the nest of Feldenkrais practitioners at first, right? And so then when he came after that training, his second training was in Amherst, Massachusetts, which he died in the middle of it. I mean, he became ill after the second year and did not complete the training. So, but that particular training was based on human developmental movement, the movement of babies. So there's these 2 sources he was drawing from. And you know, he died in the process because we're never finished, and left it up to his heirs and students to carry on the method.
Was he married?
He was.
Several times. Go. Yay.
Yes, and one of his wives was a pediatrician. So this is where he got to watch lots of babies.
Oh,
Lots of babies.
the sun's out.
So I know. And happy Chinese New Year, you guys. It's the year of the tiger. It's going to be a year of expansion.
Well, gung hai fat choi.
Yeah, gung hai fa choi. So I think for our opposing forces, all we need is a bit of space. You'll need a bit of arm length. We'll have our legs long. And if you need something under your arm, because we'll be lying like, if you need something under your wrist or arm to make it more comfortable, you can certainly have that available. And let's start in standing so we have a reference. We have a reference to what the lesson might do for us today. And then just stand on your legs. Notice where your head is, how your head is stacked on top, how you experience your back. The support of your legs. And if you were to take a step forward, onto which leg would you shift so that you could free up the stepping leg? And just do that a few times. Do it very slowly. And notice, how do you redistribute the forces in yourself? As you take the weight off of one leg to take a step forward. How, in this wobbly stack of bones, do you keep your balance? So if something's going forward, does your chest go forward or does it go backwards? Does your head go forward? Or does it stay relative to how it is on the spine when you're standing? If you just lift one leg, not even lift it, bend the knee so that the weight comes away from the heel. And then put that back. What sort of change ripples or moves through your pelvis, your lower back, your hips, your chest, your head? So does the whole carriage move forward, or do places move in opposition? What do you do with one of your arms? Or both of your arms? And now just stand and spread your feet a little bit so you have a wider base. And begin to lower the body forward so that the arms hang like a monkey. They just hang. It's not reaching for the floor. You just lean a little forward so the arms hang away from the body. And then come back up. And do that a number of times and listen very carefully to what parts of you go back in response to the weight of the head, which is going forward. The head's very heavy, so we have to counterbalance it. The arms are doing nothing, they're just hanging. So notice what part of you goes back. And then do this a couple of different ways. As you bring the body forward, the head forward. Lower the head to look at the floor. Lower the head to look at the floor. And how does your spine respond? So we're not trying to reach the floor, just lowering the head and listening to what keeps you from falling on your face. So it's lowering the head, just the head. Actually, just stand and stand for a moment. Just stand. Let your arms hang by your sides. And then just lower the head so that the back of the neck opens and the chin comes down towards the base of your throat. And what might be changing behind you? How do you counter, if there were no muscles attaching the head to the spine, it would fall right off. So think about the head, the back of the skull is attached to the neck and the top of the shoulder girdle, and those muscles lengthen. There's also little muscles between each vertebral processes. And those muscles are keeping you, and of course the tendons, and are keeping the head from falling right off. So now what if you bring the whole face forward? So rather than lowering the head, like you were wearing a mask and it was stuck to your face and someone was trying to pull the mask off, so your whole face would move forward. And that's a different shape of the neck. So if you lower the head and look down, the back of the neck has to lengthen. If you bring the face forward, the back of the neck shortens. Can you feel that? So if one direction, the back of the neck is lengthening, how do you counterbalance that weight compared to counterbalancing the weight of the face moving forward and the back of the neck shortening? Something has to lengthen backwards or move backwards, or again, you would be falling on your face and reaching in front of you to catch yourself. So that's our inquiry. Walk around a little bit, feel if anything has changed. And then come lie on your mat. Notice how you rest on the floor. And let's revisit this primitive form of the human. Feldenkrais speaks about throughout this lesson, how would you build a human being? And so he starts with the most primitive representation that we have of humans, which is a line with 2 lines for legs, 2 lines for arms, and a circle on top. So you've got the long line of the spine from the tail to the head, and where this, in the drawings, the head is sitting on top of the stick, on top of the line. But actually, the line is up further into the head, right behind your soft palate. And then the lines of the legs kind of make a V, an inverted V. You could lift your head. Actually, if you lift your head to look at the V of your legs, your head is moving forward. And notice the lifting of the head creates a pressure through the back. So just lift the head and set it down. And notice that a place in the back is pressed into the floor. So lift the head a number of times to look at the inverted V of your legs and feel what presses backwards. It's not that you press it, it is pressed. It is pressed. And if you were truly a stick for a spine, if the stick were very thin, at that point where it presses into the floor, it would break. So where would that place be? If you had a very thin and brittle stick for a spine and you lifted and started bending the stick, where along your length would it break? Where, how does the stick absorb the weight of the head being lifted? And then rest. And now think again of the muscles. You could think of them as strings or rubber bands attached to the back of the skull and anchoring the head to the neck. And lift your head a few more times to look forward at your feet and think of those rubber bands as lengthening. So the rubber bands are lengthening, giving flexibility, and something is being pressed. Places are being pressed, the chest, maybe the shoulder blades, maybe a certain vertebrae or two or three or four, you feel very clearly pressing into the floor. And what happens in your hip joints? And does anything happen in your pelvis or in the lower back? So we don't have a stick. We have, this was very interesting. You can rest and play with it as you like. Feldenkrais then starts talking about if we took, so a stick is not going to work for a human being because it would break every time you moved the head around somewhere. So instead of a stick, can you imagine a long strand of balls that's threaded on a string or a line? And each of those balls has rubber bands attaching it to the ball below it in the front and the sides and the back. And now with this image, could you lift the head and see what do the balls do? What sort of shape do the balls make along this line? Which ones flex forwards and roll over the next and roll over the next? It's an interesting image to play with because this whole structure could then be rolled into a circle like a wheel. And does thinking of your spine in this way, does it affect how you lift your head? Pause. And bring your right arm long on the floor overhead, with the back of the hand on the floor. If you need a cushion under the wrist to make it more comfortable. It can be kind of angular, maybe straighten the elbow so that it's a little angled out to the side. Yeah, so it's like part of a V. You've got the legs in a V and you've got the arm out kind of in a V where it's comfortable. And like this, barely lift the arm from the floor and listen for the opposing movement. So you've got this long lever out there to the right. But it's raised. It's not out to this. If it's near the head, if possible, it can be somewhat bent. And what we're listening for is first, what happens with the shoulder blade? What is pressed into the floor as you lift the arm? And how does the chest anchor itself to the arm when you lift it, so the arm doesn't pop off? We're building a human here. And can you sense, unless you're doing something to interfere, the balls of your spine will be pulling to the left somewhere as you begin to lift the arm. The balls of your spine move to the left. There is the equal and opposite action. The ribs. And you feel that pull, that change of shape. And feel what presses into the ground, as well as pulls over in opposition to the lifting arm. And now, leaving the arm raised as it is, lift your head to look at your feet. And now feel what presses into the floor. What is pressed into the floor. And then lift the arm, alternate lifting the arm and listening for the opposing force going in the opposite direction. Doesn't have to lift high. The higher you lift it, gravity starts to then pull on it and you won't have that opposing force. So lift the head and then lift the arm. And then try lifting them together, which is quite different. Lift the arm and the head together. And feel what presses the floor. What is pressed backwards? Rest your arms down, give your shoulder a pause. And now simply lift your right leg a little tiny bit and feel where is the opposing force. What's the oppositional movement of just lifting? Let's lift the right leg. So what is pressed into the floor and what becomes lighter? Besides the leg, are there other places that also lift away from the floor? So maybe the lumbar, does your lumbar spine arch? And the pelvis go tip backwards? The hip joint goes downwards into the floor. And the leg can be light. If you can find the oppositional forces and allow them to oppose the movement, you will have a light leg. Pause with that and think of your balls of your spine with the large ball up on top of your head. And again, lift it so that the back of the neck lengthens and feel what presses into the floor now. And now lift the face towards the ceiling, which means the back of the neck will shorten. Like a chicken pecking. And now feel how different that is. How different that is in terms of what is pressed into the floor. And lift the face like someone's trying to pull your mask off. Many times, many times. And notice if your abdomen and chest and ribs tend to flatten. And does your lower back, your lumbar, open down towards the floor? Lift the face. The chest is flattened. The belly is pulled towards the chest, and the lumbar is pressed, if not into the floor, a little bit more towards it. Don't do it forcefully. Just keep lifting your face and take frequent pauses. This is a large work for the muscles of the neck. And now go back to lifting your right leg. Find the opposing forces. And now lift the leg and the face together. The leg and the face together. Lift one and then lift the other and then lift them both together. So lifting the head with the leg changes the forces because the head is in the middle. And now raise your right arm, unless you've chosen to use your other arm. Raise your right arm again on the floor. Extend it overhead comfortably. And raise it from the floor a few times. Think of it as being a V at the top, part of the V. If you had both your arms up, you'd be making a V. And listen for the oppositional movement. So it's not Pilates where we're pulling everything into the spine, but allowing the spine to go over, the balls to move over to the left. And now lift the arm and lift the same leg. Lift the arm and lift the same leg together and feel, where does the weight go? What is the opposing movement? And then play with lifting the head to look forward or lifting the face, and lifting it with an arm or with a leg or with all three. So you've got many variations you can play with. And listen for what is the opposing movement. The more the oppositional movement is allowed to happen, the lighter things will be. The leg can float up. The arm can float up. The head can float up. Listen to how the balls of the spine move away, press into the floor, or lift away from the floor. And then leave it and rest. And lift again, have your legs long. Lift again your face. Bring your face towards the ceiling. Feel how the chest flattens. In a different area of the spine or the balls are pressed into the floor. The back of the neck shortens. And now bring your other arm long overhead. Oops, sorry about that. So you're lifting your left arm, your other arm, and you're listening for the opposing movement. Feel first how the arm anchors itself into the chest with a whole bunch of rubber bands. And as you lift it, the shoulder blade is flattened. Does your shoulder blade go closer to the spine or does it move away from the spine? And what about your spine, the balls? Can you feel them move, allow them to move somehow to the right, away from the arm? Does one of your legs get longer or shorter? Does your pelvis tilt or roll? Where does the weight go? When the weight of the arm leaves the floor or leaves the pillow. And now lift just the same leg in the easiest, lightest way. So the hip joint, it goes backwards. Maybe the pelvis rolls a bit. The lower back, does it arch away from the floor a bit? If you arched your lower back and allowed your hip joint to go downwards into the floor, would it make your leg lighter and easier to lift? And now lift your face again. And feel what happens in the pelvis and in the hip joints and in the lumbar. The chest and the shoulder blades. The neck shortens and other places lengthen. And then lift the face and the leg. Different forces, different opposing movements. Just lift the leg a little. We're not auditioning for Radio City Music Hall. Yes, I am. Oh, you think so? Now lift your head and lengthen the back muscles so the head moves forward and the spine does something different. And from there, lift the leg. Lift the face, lift the head so that the back of the neck lengthens, and lift the leg together. And then go back to lifting the arm and listen for the pull that opposes it. And if you're having difficulty locating where it is, lift the arm. It's the beginning of lifting. It's just the beginning of lifting where the arm starts to gather, the chest gathers the arm into it. And then the weight of the arm lifts, that long lever lifts, and something has to balance it out over on the opposite side. Unless it's being prevented by unnecessary and parasitic action. Just the very beginning of the movement. Just if you go all the way to vertical, then gravity has taken over your arm and there's no oppositional movement. Lift the same leg in the easiest, lightest way. And then lift the leg and the face. And now lift the face and the arm and the leg. And it's not about lifting. It's about learning what opposes the movement. Yes. All those balls have the ability to change in the way a stick would not. Although we as humans tend to fixate things and parts of ourselves can become stick-like. So this is the antidote. One of more than 500. Number 333. Take a rest. Have your arms down by your sides in a sort of a V. And think that the top of the V is your head. Your arms are down there, and then you've got the other V of your legs. And just lift the left leg in the easiest, lightest way, a little bit, and listen to what happens to the opposite shoulder. So as you lift your left leg, and the hip joint goes backwards and downwards towards the floor, the lumbar lifts a little bit. Maybe the pelvis turns a little bit because the weight of the leg is different now, and the pelvis can roll. The arms are down by the sides. And do you feel the right shoulder responding to the lifting of the left leg? Is it pulled a little forward? Does a part of the back press into the floor? And does the right shoulder get a little lighter? Lift your face towards the ceiling. And now lift your head so the back of the neck lengthens. Look down towards the feet. And feel how the shoulders respond as you lift the face and lift the head. And now experiment with lifting the face or so that the neck shortens, or lifting the head so that the neck lengthens, and just lifting the left leg together. What happens with the right shoulder? And make this more and more simple and more subtle. Make it lighter, make it simpler. And then do the same experiment on the other side. So the right leg, you can lift the leg a few times and listen. Is there any lightening through the opposite shoulder away from the floor? So if there's a lightening of the shoulder as the leg lifts, what's pressing? What is it that presses in such a way that allows the left shoulder to get lighter? Try lifting the long opposite arm the next time you lift the leg. It's down by the side. It's the arms down by the side. Now you just lift the arm from down there. Lift the leg and lift the arm. What is the opposing movement on the floor? What is pressed into the floor? What do the very mobile balls, all connected by rubber bands, what do they allow for the ribs to do? The chest and the shoulder blades and the pelvis. Make it very light, very light. And then lift the face. As you lift the other limbs, as you lift the appendages, lift the face. Just a little, just lift the arm a little bit, the leg a little bit, the face a little bit. And then the opposite. Rest as you need to. Think of the opposite lines. The line of the arm, the line of the leg. Lifting the face. Or lifting the head and looking forwards. You could make it very, very obvious, and you could, the next time you lift, you could point with your finger towards the opposite foot. Just point at it. So the arm comes across the body in a diagonal, the head lifts. Ah, what has gone down backwards into the floor? What is pressed into the floor? If you lift the head, look at the lifting foot and point at it with the opposite arm. Boom, there. So if we're constructing a human being, this sort of has something to do with the pattern of walking, except that if you were in a standing human with all these balls as a spine that can bend and turn and make a circle, and then you've got this heavy bowling ball on top, if you lowered your head each time, you would have to have a massive movement backwards in order to keep yourself balanced. Therefore, if you lift the head, lift the face, this might be a more agreeable pattern to put into the human that we're building for walking. Because when we're humans walking, the eyes look forward, the face looks forward, eyes on the horizon. Therefore, when we're moving in the field of gravity, if something like a leg is moving forward to take a step, something has to move backward to balance it out. So imagine, just take a rest. And imagine yourself with the string of balls and jointed sticks for your legs and your arms. And the big heavy bowling ball on top. So the legs are supporting. The spine is mobile and the head has to be balanced. And if you were to start to move one of the sticks forward to take a step, where would the balls go? What would the opposite arm do if you also moved it forward? If you move a left leg and a right arm forward, imagine what the balls in the back, how they move backwards. And the face, in order to stay forwards, it won't look at the floor. The back will move backwards and the face will move forwards. Can you imagine constructing yourself and teaching yourself to walk like this? Imagine this heavy ball has to be balanced on a flexible string of balls and on two sticks that bend. And in a way that's so light and so flowing that it's like you're weightless. You float over the ground. And Feldenkrais makes the very interesting statement that moving in such a way is the difference between walking out on a branch and maintaining your balance, or walking out on a branch and having it break underneath you. Because of the way the weight is distributed, either in a very efficient way that makes the skeleton weightless, or it makes it weighted and stiff, and therefore stepping on the branch, forces are not equally distributed and the branch would break and you would fall to your death. So therefore, the monkeys that learned this in the trees were the ones that survived. So bring yourself up to standing. And just stand. Feel if anything feels new or novel or different. And separate your feet, your legs a little bit, spread them. And again, lower the heavy head and feel how the neck lengthens. Look down and feel where you move backwards, how you move backwards, in order for the head to not drag the skeleton onto its face. So that weighted head has to be balanced by a backward movement in the spine. So that if you're standing on a branch, you won't fall. So now what if you took your face forward and let your arms hang like an ape? Take the face forward and feel how the lumbar goes back. The lumbar lengthens. If you take the face forward, the chest flattens out. And you could just very, very, very lightly bring your arms a little forward, like they're trailing your fingers through the water. And the spine goes back. And remember, the spine is not a stick. It's a whole bunch of balls. So now, if you were to just take the beginning of a step, don't step, but as though you're going to take a step, you have to unweight one leg, and so the knee will bend, the stick will bend. And what happens in your lumbar, your chest, your face? You shift the weight, you bend the knee to free the heel. The leg becomes weightless. And then all that's needed is a little swing. And the foot can take a step. And now what? Just the beginning. Don't walk anywhere. Just, and don't even, in Tai Chi, it's called an empty leg. You lift an empty leg. You bend the leg, it empties out. And that in that emptying out, you're filling your back. And the face goes a little forward. The back of the neck shortens. And as the back of the neck shortens and the face goes forward, the forces are balanced. The leg is light. You might feel one arm moving forward. Just taste it. Just see if you can taste it. That walking can be weightless because that is our design. This is our heritage. This is our inheritance. By knowing how and allowing the forces to counterbalance the weight of the thigh. So when the knee bends, the knee is bending forward and the hip joint is going backwards. If you also move your face a little forward, it will allow the lumbar to lengthen and the chest to soften, and the leg becomes weightless. Just taste it. And your walks in the woods will never be the same. Just taste it.